And where was Sir Jiminy?
Oh, Jiminy?
Hey, psst, leave me out of this.
They put him in a little sack.
No.
Yeah.
Is Honesty the Best Policy? Presented by Vanessa Atchoy, Allison Russell, and Liz Karatanova. This is a cowbird. Like almost every other organism on the planet, it is trying to survive and has developed some unique techniques to do so. Cowbirds take part in something called brood parasitism. Instead of making their own nests, females sneak their eggs into other birds' nests to be raised by birds of different species. In order to make their scheme more believable, they often remove the eggs belonging to the mothers of the other species. Here, we can see a female cowbird laying an egg in a nest. Once her egg is laid, she removes one of the other eggs to preserve the illusion. When the nest's owner returns, she will raise the baby bird as its own, taking care of it until it is fully grown. The female cowbird does not need to stick around while its baby grows up, all while she knows it's being taken care of. That is deception.
We define deception as leading someone to believe something false. Manipulation is influencing a person or situation to produce a desired outcome. Manipulation does not inherently have to do with a falsity, but it has the potential to. Lying is unambiguous deceit with intent. Lies also have their own developmental pattern, starting with primary lies, which are statements that are simply and deliberately untrue. A secondary lie is an untruth told to conceal one's own transgressions. The last kind of lie, a tertiary lie, often utilizes planning and storytelling to increase the complexity of a lie in order to maintain plausibility. Let's look at an example to understand the differences between all of these definitions. Say a child was supposed to shut a door so the dog wouldn't get out, but she forgot and the dog escaped. Let's call this child Jane. Joe, Jane's brother, sees that the dog is out, and given the fact that they were the only two people awake, knows that it must have been Jane. In scenario 1, Jane is 3 years old. In this scenario, Joe asks Jane if she let the dog out and she says no. This lie is simply to avoid blame, so it is a primary lie. Now let's look at a second scenario where Jane is slightly older. In the second scenario, Joe asks Jane if she let the dog out, and Jane tells Joe that she had a really hard day and will cry if he tells their mother, and it will be all his fault that she is sad. This is manipulation. Then John, their father, comes home and sees that the dog is out. Jane acts surprised and exclaims that this is dangerous and they need to catch him. This is deception. Her actions imply that she does not know about the dog being out, but her actions are non-explicit. John then asks Jane if she was the one that let the dog out. She says no and that Joe did it. This is a secondary lie. This lie differs from a primary lie because it is not a simple denial, but an intentional act to create a false belief. Later, John asks her if she is sure she did not let the dog out. She says that she was in her room watching television, so she couldn't have let the dog out, but Joe wasn't with her, so he can't confirm this. This is a tertiary lie, a lie that maintains the plausibility of her untruths while also giving a future direction for further lies. By telling a tertiary lie, she has laid the groundwork for a future story that she can stick to. In looking at these various lies, we can see how they are interconnected and draw from manipulation and deceit. We can see that manipulation is a large umbrella term in which deceit fits nicely. One cannot deceive without first understanding manipulation. Lying, however, can exist within deceit or outside of it. Primary lies, for instance, do not always have deception as the motive. Secondary lies fit within deceit, as there is an untrue statement which the liar wishes another person to believe is true. Tertiary lies further develop from secondary lies and function to show advanced understanding of plausibility of lying. Animals deceive to save food, to be a competitive hunter, and to reduce their work-reward ratio. But why do humans lie? We posit that it might be a little more complex.
I lied to my friend in order to spare his feelings.
I lied that I was a major to get free food.
The last time I lied was to get somebody out of my room.
One of the most famous lies ever told was carried out by this man, Charles Ponzi. He constructed an enormous web of lies that later came to be known as the Ponzi scheme. What you may not know is that a woman by the name of Sarah Howe carried out this idea nearly 40 years prior in the 1880s. It looked a little like this. Sarah Howe started her ladies' deposit company by asking women to invest in a charity. She promised a very high interest rate with a very fast monetary return. The first group of investors would give money to Sarah. She would then ask the second round of investors for money. This money would then go toward paying the first group of investors. As the number of investors grew, so did her monetary income. People often associate the purpose of lying with the surface feature. You heard a few examples a minute ago, like getting free food, sparing someone's feelings, or getting someone out of your room. How's surface feature was making money? Might there be more to it than that?
We propose a positive feedback mechanism between theory of mind and lying. Both emerge and develop from one another. In other words, a crude theory of mind is essential to initiating the ability to tell primary lies. From there, the emergence of secondary and tertiary lies are demonstrative of an ongoing process of its development.
Before we go any further, let's define a few terms. Primary lies are deliberately factually untrue statements. Secondary lies require that an individual take into consideration the mental state of the listener. Tertiary lies maintain consistency throughout telling the lie to enforce plausibility.
Lastly, theory of mind. Premack and Woodruff define theory of mind as the ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, intents, desires, emotions, or knowledge to oneself and to others, and to understand that others have beliefs, desires, intentions, and perspectives that are different from one's own.
Theory of mind develops throughout childhood, and evidence of it can be seen in the types of lies that children make as they age from birth to adolescence. The onset of lying begins around 2 years of age. Lying at this age is typically antisocial and rudimentary. As we know, it's very easy to tell when young children are lying. This is because while their lying is evidence of having theory of mind, at this age it is just barely beginning to form. This is further evidenced by the emergence of unsophisticated primary lies between 2 and 3 years of age. Around 3 years old, we begin to see children using prosocial lies in addition to antisocial ones. Over time, and as children continue telling lies, they begin to hone their growing concept of theory of mind. Around 4 years old begins the onset of more nuanced secondary lying. Finally, tertiary lying begins between 7 and 8 years of age. At this point, children can continue to further develop their theory of mind and will eventually reach a peak during 13 to 17 years old, where the highest density of lies occur. This timeline helps demonstrate the positive feedback mechanism we mentioned earlier in our hypothesis, more specifically in the crudeness of primary lies when compared to the higher sophistication of secondary and tertiary lies. The escalating levels of maturity and refinement in the construction of lies throughout childhood is again evidence of how theory of mind and lying have a codependent relationship and feed off of one another during human development. Children also demonstrate their understanding of theory of mind by their interpretation of others' lies.
Now let's look at a parallel timeline to look at the development of theory of mind. Around 2 years old, we see the emergence of theory of mind. Then, between 1.5 and 3 years, we see mental state awareness. This goes beyond crude theory of mind to be able to understand the mental states of others around you. At around 4 years, your theory of mind lets you understand that people might believe something that is not true. This coincides with secondary lies. At around 7 years, your understanding of mixed emotions and non-literal situations allows you to surpass secondary lies into tertiary lies. We can see by looking at both timelines back to back that they mirror each other and help support our hypothesis.
Numerous studies on children at various ages and stages of development have tested whether or not children are able to tell the difference between lies told for malicious reasons and lies told due to ignorance or other more harmless reasons. Overwhelmingly, it has been found that children who demonstrated having a concept of theory of mind were able to differentiate between these types of lies. One example done with children aged between 4 and 10 years old measured the level of punishment children assigned to a character read to them from one of 2 different stories. In each of the stories, the protagonist featured someone who brought a backpack with drinks in it to school for a field trip. However, when they got to school, they were asked by a teacher whether or not they needed a drink before leaving for the trip. The protagonist in the story was either aware of the fact that they already had drinks in their bag or unaware of it. Either way, the protagonist lied and said that they needed the extra drink. When asked on a scale of 1 to 3 how much the person should be punished for their transgression, children who had previously passed a test demonstrating their theory of mind rated the person who knowingly lied as deserving more punishment than the person who unknowingly lied. Even more interesting was that there were no significant differences in deserved punishment ratings amongst the children who did not pass a test demonstrating their theory of mind. Studies such as these show the importance of theory of mind throughout a child's development and how it can help their understanding of lying as a whole.
Moving away from neurotypical behavior, we can now examine how lying manifests in other disorders. Autism spectrum disorder. As defined in the DSM, it is a social communication disorder. Given ASD individuals impaired ability to lie, ASD will serve as one side of the spectrum of lying as we approach our hypothesis from the lower extreme.
To test the way that autism could impact lying behavior, Lee et al. Conducted a study that examined the effects of autism on lying extinction. They set up toys that were concealed behind the children. For each toy, there was a sound cue as a hint. The first two were explicit, for example, an Elmo noise for an Elmo plushie. The test round played a Christmas song, which is not tied to a single character, so the child could not guess the toy based on the sound. After the first experimenter set up this system, a second experimenter called the first experimenter out, giving the child an opportunity to cheat at the game. When the experimenter returned, they asked the child, firstly, "Did you turn around to look at the toy while I was gone?" Following this, they asked the child, "What do you think the toy is?" And after that, "Why do you think so?" These questions tested the children who cheated for their propensity for lying as well as how developed their lying technique was. Their data showed that autistic children were able to deny that they turned around, a primary lie, but were unable to keep the lie up when they were asked what the animal was and how they know. Control children were much better at feigning ignorance, but were also largely unable to answer the why question. This goes to show that children with autism have a limited lying ability, and neurotypical children between the ages of 6 and 10 do not have a developed enough theory of mind to be able to create a tertiary lie. A tertiary lie in this instance would have been able to build upon what they said about what the toy was and be able to give a plausible explanation to the experimenter about why or why not they were not aware of the identity of the toy.
Now looking at other factors, how does autism impact theory of mind? Gallagher and Frith conducted a task in which a child is shown two puppets. One is the friend and the other is the thief. The sweet is placed in a box and the child is given the instructions. Always help the friend, never help the thief. In the sabotage task, this would require the child to sabotage the thief's attempts to steal the sweet by locking the box. If the child sees the friend puppet coming, however, he should leave the box open. In the deception task, the box is unlocked, and the child is asked what he will say when the puppet asks if the box is open. The child should lie to the thief, but tell the truth to the friend. It was found that when autistic children were required to lie, they performed worse than control children matched for mental age. However, they performed as well when required to sabotage using physical manipulation, locking the box, demonstrating that their failure on deception task was not due to an inability to understand the task, but an inability to understand the mind of their opponent.
On the opposite side of the lying spectrum is individuals who excel at secondary and tertiary lies. For this, we will be looking at individuals who have borderline personality disorder. The DSM-5's criteria for borderline personality disorder include significant impairments in personality functioning, impairments in interpersonal functioning, pathological personality traits, disinhibition, and antagonism.
Having a functional theory of mind involves being able to interpret and understand others' mental and emotional states as being separate from your own. Part of this is the ability to deduce these mental and emotional states from outside stimuli, like face and body language. Recent studies have shown that people with borderline personality disorder may have a heightened ability to detect these states in other people based on their bodily appearance. One such study conducted in 2011, Franzen et al., built upon previous assessments by conducting a trust-based task involving faces. The methodological design involved 30 individuals affected with borderline personality disorder and 30 matched controls. The 18-round trust task placed each subject in the role of an investor, with 4 trustees represented by a picture on a screen in front of them. Each round consisted of an investment phase, feedback phase, and evaluation phase with a single trustee. Subjects were given 90 monetary units to invest into the trustee, and this amount would be tripled after investment. Subjects would receive an amount equal to however much they did not transfer plus whatever the trustee returned. The trustee's return amount was based on whether they were fair or unfair. fair trustees would return more than a third they were given, while unfair ones would not, leading to the subjects having to guess whether or not they should trust their trustee in order to succeed with their investment. Finally, the subject would be asked to assess how fair they deemed the trustee of that round to be. The manipulation of this experiment consisted of the trustees' facial expressions. They either had an emotional facial cue of a happy or angry expression, or a neutral expression. Both groups of subjects correctly rated trustees as either fair or unfair, but the borderline personality disorder group was found to be able to identify emotional states as well as use them to tailor their behavior in social situations. This shows that borderline personality disorder does not impair individuals from recognizing emotional states, and therefore that their theory of mind is also not impaired compared to neurotypical people. Furthermore, the borderline personality disorder group was also able to correctly identify unfair trustees, even with a lack of emotional response to go with it. That is, they adjusted their investments for unfair trustees despite them having neutral or favorable expressions. In comparison, the control group had trouble making this adjustment for trustees that had neutral or favorable expressions. This increased vigilance is evident that they have a superior or enhanced theory of mind in comparison to people without borderline personality disorder.
Borderline personality disorder is often associated with higher rates of deception and manipulation. In a study by Mendel and Coker, 88% of the therapists that were interviewed who had treated people with borderline personality disorder experienced manipulation from them. Lying was cited as being one of the two most common forms of manipulation, suggesting that lying is frequently used to manipulate others. Pathological lying is often found in those with bipolar disorder, and their lies are usually used to avoid negative consequences or to gain concern of caretakers or other individuals who have something to offer them. These forms of lies, secondary and tertiary lies, are more advanced forms. This data suggests that there is an increase in deception behavior, and this increase is likely due to their superior theory of mind. Alright, so let's revisit our hypothesis. There's a positive feedback loop between lying and theory of mind. As theory of mind develops, so does lying. In this way, the relationship between the two is reciprocal. However, in order to develop primary lies, there needs to be a foundation of theory of mind. Theory of mind leads to primary lies, which lead to secondary and tertiary lies. These lies allow us to develop our theory of mind. In applying this to a spectrum of lying, we see that neurotypical behavior is situated in the middle. On the lower end of lies, we also expect a lower theory of mind. On the higher end of lies, we expect a higher, more advanced theory of mind. With lower lies and lower theory of mind, we see autism, and on the higher spectrum, we see borderline personality disorder.
Overall, to reiterate our hypothesis, we propose a positive feedback mechanism between theory of mind and lying. Both emerge and develop from one another.